Spencer, the other day you told me, just completely off the cuff, we've forgotten how to be bored. Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? Because it's been a life-changing conversation for me, and I'd like to bring it to a broader audience.
If you look at like in the last 20 years, the amount of digital advertising dollars that have shifted to Google and to Facebook from everybody else and the valuations that that powers for those companies, there's some really, really strong incentives and great tool sets for keeping us engaged in platforms all the time. And they measure themselves by how much of our time we spend inside of them. One of my best friends, his dad asked me a question. He goes, "Are you smarter than Einstein or is Einstein smarter than you?" I was 17 or 16 or whatever. And I said, "I feel like there's a trick question here." And he was like, "You have access to more computational power and
Yeah,
a greater library than Einstein could ever have dreamed of.
yeah.
So what are you doing with your time?"
And
Good
what's holding you
question.
back?
If there were any comparison of ourselves with our ancestors 100 years ago, let alone 300 or 500 years ago, we are functionally gods. And so what kind of gods are we? Are we the ones that are like sitting on Mount Olympus, just looking at our phones all the time and engaging with different substances to stimulate our dopamine? Or like, what are we doing?
I love tech. Put it out there. I would not be doing what I'm doing career-wise if it wasn't for the democratization and the access to knowledge and these tools, right? But certainly since November 2022, with the advent of LMs and generative AI or ChatGPT, I've seen a change. It's almost like social media is becoming more immersive and more geared towards that attention economy to that you're speaking to. Is that something you've seen as well? Or
Yeah. And I kind of checked out from most of the social media, to be honest, a few years ago. But no, yeah, there's no Luddite in what I'm saying. Like I'm tech is power, tech is capability.
yeah.
You can be used for good, ill, or hedonism. Like it's a neutral thing. And I think I wish that there were more communities or forums, or that I had an easier time finding the communities or forums where people were using all of the tools that we have to more frequently engage in really empowering and ennobling stuff.
So
Yeah.
when you said to me that comment about we've forgotten how to be bored, there
Yeah.
was a bit of a shock moment for me, and that was only a couple of weeks ago. And subsequently to that, I have looked in a lot deeper in my screen time and actually being a lot more considered and mindful in terms of where I spend my attention and where I spend my energy as a knock-on consequence. And the thing that I've found is when I was cycling along, I would previously stop the traffic light and as a reflex, I would pull my phone out, not because I needed to, but because it had become that much of a kind of crutch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's only now breaking that I kind of see that it's similar to cigarettes, right? You don't necessarily want a cigarette, but the reflex of just going through the packets. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this thing lives right in my ear. Like it's an interrupting layer between me and reality. So yeah, I'm candidly kind of terrified of when we get into the glasses that are coming.
Well, sorry, why are you terrified? I mean, I think I know why, but tell us what your thoughts.
So I got 6 kids, and if I let my kids have their way, they'll be on iPads all the time. Like they just will be, right? Because they haven't trained themselves yet to know how to
Modulate.
manage short-term versus
Yeah,
long-term dopamine
yeah.
satisfaction, right? And I don't think that I'm close to ready to deal with some of the tech that might be coming our way. Yeah, to your point of, or to the comment that I made about not being able to be bored anymore. The most fun games you can remember playing as a child with your friends were all made up out of nothing, out of
Yep.
whole cloths. And they were such a good time.
Yeah.
And the coolest endeavors that you've been engaged in your career or as an adult or with friends, all of it comes out of that. Like real joy, I think comes out of like probably two main fountains. One is love, and the other is creativity and creation.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get into creating when you're being passively entertained. And so you're trading the big joy because it has the delayed mechanism of receipt for more and more of the short term. And you never stop to pay attention to the fact that you've let years go by. Anyway, that's the thing that I'm worried about.
No, and for sure.
Like
And I
the
think
tools that we have are incredible. They're incredible. And we could use them for such cool stuff, but we just won't if we're just entertained the whole rest of our lives.
no, I think that's really quite profound and deep how you've articulated like that. And I think that's really important. And two things come to mind. The first one was I actually bought an Apple Vision Pro to play around with it because I wanted to understand what the tech was like at its first iteration.
Yeah. Yeah.
To see, because I look at what the phones used to be like, and they were a bit slow, and that was good, and that was okay. And the user interface was a little bit more deliberate because there was allowed more time to breathe and to think. Since I've changed in terms of how I'm approaching my screen time, a big reflection for me is think back in the day when the egg timer or the beach ball or whatever. Now it's kind of like come on, where is it? Come on, hurry, because you're not getting that immediate fix. And the other point I was going to say, the degree to which short form video content is really damaging. You were talking a bit about anxious generation.
I watched like 5 podcasts with Jonathan Haidt talking about it. And after I did, I was like, actually, what I want to do with this, because one of the things he talks about repeatedly in his discussions was it's a collective action problem. It's no use being the only teenager who's not on screens all the time. Yeah. Because then you just get left out. And so you need to have your school doing it together or your group of friends doing it together, things like that. And so I was thinking I wanted to read it with a group of my peers. I have friends who have a bunch of kids, our kids same ages. All of this stuff is obviously great and awesome. The stuff itself isn't bad.
It's how we choose to use it.
We got to figure out the discipline of what we want from it and what we don't want to give to it as well.
That's really important. I can see that being a meme and like your Spencer's notes. I saw your LinkedIn post about AI notes, which are really interesting. I'm glad you're publishing those, right? Because as a grateful recipient over the years for you sending me those notes, I learned so much from them. Also, you look at these, right? These phones, right? If you look back and think, these are brilliant. These are brand new USB-C FM radio. We're looking at how can we be more mindful at work. So if we're on a shoot and we're filming something, it's because we've literally given everything to these devices. It's our phone, it's our camera, it's our radio, it's our address book, it's our way to pay, it's a way to get in and out of buildings, it's to get onto a flight, literally everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost harder to function and operate without it. And I think that's partly by design as well, right?
100% it's by design. There's a great tech blog called Techry, which talks about the business strategy and technology. And he'll talk about aggregation bundles every third article. And it's a really good point that he sets forth that, the more value you can aggregate into one point, that one point becomes incredibly valuable. They're definitely intent on driving that with us. It's hard for me to think about this. Like if Kish gets to live 100 lives, not sequentially over time, but right now in our time in history, right? Or if I get to live 100 lives, there's probably a power law or Pareto distribution of how great those lives are. There's probably a few of those that are just like, wow, really did all the best that he or she had in them and did a lot of good stuff in the world and had a lot of joy and had a great life. A decent number of okay ones. And maybe it's not a parallel distribution. Maybe it's a normal distribution. In any event, I wonder if we don't let ourselves be bored, if we don't let ourselves find those things, then it's kind of a shame. The word entertain, if we go back to kind of the Latin word, the Latin roots, it's what you do in between the times when you're occupied with something else. And so we're just kind of putting ourselves into more perpetual in-between time, but we're not necessarily occupying ourselves in what we actually want to be occupied with.
It's a complete role reversal of the initial definition of the world entertainment then, because we're almost squeezing life into perpetual in-between states now.
For you, Kish, you take big swings in life, and you're far more extroverted than I am. At least that's my impression. You do so also in collaboration with a lot of other people. And so maybe it's so second nature to you, you don't think about it very much. But what are those spark moments for you? What do those invitation moments look like to you when you're inviting other people or they're inviting you to jump into something fun? And how do you, what are some of the things that you picked up and or feel like you've learned and believe in or love?
I think it's people at the heart and at the core, right? And I think post-COVID, we have been thrown into a digital world. That was our only window and our only view into the world because of lockdowns. And there is no coincidence that loneliness has skyrocketed. These are almost cheap substitutes for friendships. Even the whole thing, Facebook, friend somebody, be a friend. And like it is, they're cheap substitutes, they're poor substitutes, they're not durable. And so the things that I get most joy and energy from is meeting new people, chatting to people, that's what the podcast's about, right? They're not scripted. And like I have Claude reviewing some of the transcripts and giving me feedback, and it's brutal. It's like you conducted a good interview, not a podcast, because it's already trained what good is for a podcast, right? So I think that's quite funny.
The glorious average.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is quite fun the other thing that I think is quite scary actually and not fun is we've gone to a point where, like, say day to day, just because we can do 16-hour days of meetings back to back, is it any wonder after subjecting ourselves to that kind of working environment full of transactional conversations that then we just absolutely crash out and spend the last few hours on a slightly smaller screen rather than the massive one that many people work from in certain sectors?
I've gotten away from it. I used to be better disciplined at asking myself the question of what uses of my time were way, way better than others and which ones were therefore I should just let them go and let those things fail. And I should get better at that. That used to be a more of a strength of mine.
So I tell you what was really helpful for me in that was the old bang on the head, because seriously, like, and it's so funny. James, one of my old bosses, I said to him that, I don't have the energy or a focus for
not
stuff.
a
And he goes,
proverbial bang on the head, an actual bang on the head.
no, it was a proper bang on the head.
Yeah.
Proper thing. But James said to me, he goes, yeah, Kish, it sounds like you developed managerial potential, old boy. Well done. So now my energy is focused on protecting me first and foremost, because when you have headaches, it's not fun and you're not the best person to be around. Put your own oxygen mask on first, which as a doctor, I've been terrible at. We make the worst patients, but then there is strength of community on social forum and networks and stuff. Because when I was going through my brain injury recovery, it was a lovely lady called Emma Cobweb, double-barreled hyphen surname, brilliant. And she was telling me about, look, Kish, you've got 7 spoons of energy to spend, 7 spoons of sugar a day, and think about how you want to spend them. So if showering is a problem and it's going to use up 2.5 spoons, then don't, or shower later in the day, or be more thoughtful about how you're deploying that energy. And I certainly think these devices are very difficult to. They're almost, you said about the AirPod being a interface between you and the real world. And if you look at all this disruption, a rectangular screen this big has caused, my concern is if you look at the immersive worlds that are coming and we don't learn the lessons from social media into this new immersive world, then the potential benefit will obviously be high, but so too will the harm. And as a doctor, first and foremost, it's how are we deploying these technologies in ways that are helping human as opposed to harm.
For me, I do a ton of audiobooks and I love that. I also do a ton of podcasts and I reflexively look at the news all the time, and that's mostly a waste of time. The other thing that's coming to mind is, as you're saying this, is like, whether it's the screen or this, there's no feedback loop between what I'm doing with other people and what happens in here, except for the gamified version in social media. where there's posturing stuff and all that stuff on top of it also. That's a question I have for you. Cause again, you engage, you strike me as a person that gets to more real conversations on social media than the average bear.
So what I would say is I can reflect back on merging the worlds of social media and mainstream media. And that was when I would film something. Initial early days, it was the camera on front TV and then putting that on social media or screen recording or whatever. But I was not very good setting boundaries. I would literally be like, in the early days of Facebook, and yeah, it worked really well. I got videos to like 5, 6, 700,000 people, some little clips, but that was constantly giving the algorithm what it wanted in terms of somebody liked it, send them a message, say thanks so much, do this, right? And I think in terms of my evolution now is when somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I'm not going to type a message because it'll take too long, but I'll send them a voice note or I'll send them an audio note and say, look, thanks so much for connecting. Great to meet you. How's your day going? So it's trying to humanize that interaction or that conversation. And you're landing on some really interesting stuff. And the reason that I say that is because Deborah Cohen, who I did my Christmas shopping, has written a book about bad influence. And this is how the internet hijacked our health, essentially. And she's going on now to do research about parasocial relationships in terms of, for me, as a doctor, the human connection in terms of people telling me stuff as a doctor, they would not tell anybody else in their lives. So whether it's communicating in person in the clinic or communicating on social media or in a newsroom, it's all the same to me. It's communication. But what Deb's going on to research and understand is when people trade off that doctor relationship or doctor-patient relationship from one to many, and then they start selling them goods and services, suddenly you're getting into a world where you're applying mainstream media credibility into a social media world that is less regulated and doesn't have the same standards in terms of advertising. I think it's something that we've all got to take ownership of ourselves as individuals and really think. And I think you summed it up really well. Where do we want to give our energy and attention? Where do we not? And that collective action piece is so interesting because I feel very uneasy about just banning social media for children because, look at all the good that's come from it as well. Yes, it's addictive. Yes, it's problematic.
I was a 1995 AOL chat room's 10-year-old.
AOL, and do you remember MSN Messenger? So is that not highly hypocritical, just removing something from children when we have that a rudimentary earlier form of that technology earlier on?
Yeah, and there will be oscillations back and forth. We'll overreact, we'll underreact. The pendulum will swing around. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But yeah, I mean, the thing that the kind of anchoring thought I just come back to is yeah, like if you sat down with any of your great grandparents from 1,000 years ago or 100 or 500 years ago, and they looked at your life today,
yeah,
and then they're like, wait, how do you spend your time? Huh. Okay. We've got a lot to be grateful for, but since it's all around us all the time, it's the water. It's we're like the fish in the water, so we don't see it. But
yeah, well, the boiling frog in the water or
Yeah.
something like that. We
Yeah,
haven't
yeah, yeah,
noticed
yeah.
that the temperature's got so hot around us. So,
right.
but I mean, I'm hopeful about tech. And Spencer, I'm so grateful
Yeah.
for your time. Thank you so much. If Spencer or I have stumbled upon anything in this unscripted conversation that came from one comment about we've forgotten how to be bored, please do put it in the comments. We would love to hear from you. And until next time, Spencer, have a lovely afternoon, evening, and speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Have a good one, Kish.